Oh, really?
Vampire! We take your candy!
Count Dracula.
I am Dracula. And I bid you welcome, Mr. Hunt, to my house. Come in.
Our first award goes to the vampire for most blood drained in a single evening.
The strength of the vampire is that people will not believe in him.
Hey YouTube. So normally I have a little fluff here in the beginning, but I want to talk about something. I looked at the metrics and it looks like the average watch time is very short. So if you're one of those people who clicks off after 3 minutes, do me a favor before you go. Please just comment and tell me why you're clicking out, what you were hoping that this whole thing was, what you were hoping you were watching on this channel, what you want me to do in the future, because that will help me shape this channel into something people want to watch. So you clicked on it for a reason, whether it's because you know me from my books or you like vampires, or you just want to know how to do a podcast. There's a reason you clicked on this and there's a reason you're clicking off. So before you go, just do me a favor and tell me why it is that you are clicking off. For the rest of you, we're going to jump right in. And I will tell you why as soon as I get to recording the podcast. The opening's already uploaded and Juliet is at my feet. This is going to be a quick one, so let's just go ahead and get to it. Good evening, my fellow vampire lovers. The sun is going down and you know what that means. It's time for me to record another episode of my podcast, The Beautiful Dead. As always, I'm your host, Lena Nazari. You can find me by going to lenanazari.com. It's just the easiest way to do it, and then you can find links to 100 ways to talk to me. This is going to be a quick one. Normally I have a bunch of stuff to talk about in the beginning, but I'm going to be completely honest and real with you guys. I have been picking up at the hospital like crazy and I am exhausted. If you're watching the YouTube version, you can probably see it. But I have committed to getting this out to you guys and I am going to do it. You know, part of me just wanted to send something out saying I'm not posting this week, you'll have to wait, but that's not fair to you guys, and that's not what I stand for. I commit to something, and I like to do it unless I just absolutely cannot. So we're going to do this, but we're going to do it quickly. For those of you who got the email from me about Juliet, it looks like she's going to be okay. She's at my feet right now. As far as we know, she is not going to need surgery, so we are going to watch her for a little while and see what goes on. But it looks like she's going to be okay, and thank you to everybody who reached out to me about Juliet. All right, I'm not kidding. I'm just going to jump right into this, okay? There's no fluff on this one. There's no foreplay. We're just jumping right in. All right, for those of you who are not familiar with this podcast or this YouTube channel, spoiler alert, I ruin everything. I'm going to tell you who hooks up with who gets pregnant, who dies, who kills them, who gets turned, all that stuff. So be forewarned. This one is very obscure. So if you've seen it, I'll be surprised. If you don't want to watch it and you just want to hear me talk about it because you're kind of curious, well, I'm going to do a very quick summary because there's just not that much out there about this movie. And I thought about writing my own summary, but there's really not much to write about. So, Dance of the Damned from 1989. Jody is a stripper at the Paradise Cafe. She's unaware that a vampire is watching her perform, as well as listening to her telephone conversation afterwards while she pleads with her ex-husband to please let her say happy birthday to her son. Now that, not that Jody would care, because afterwards she just wants to be dead and starts to contemplate suicide. At closing time, the vampire is waiting for her and offers her $1,000 in exchange for her company for the night and some conversation. He wants to know about the life of a mortal, about daytime and sunlight and friends and caring. Jody has till 6 a.m. to teach him these things, then he intends to feed off of her and end her suffering. In the meantime, however, the vampire helps Jody to see her son. Jody helps the vampire to feel the sun. Jody and the vampire make love, and come 6 a.m., Jody fights to stay alive, ultimately ending with the vampire committing suicide by joining Jody in the morning sun. That's, I mean, there's not much more to the plot than that, so that's really all you need to know. Vampiric references and crossovers. So she actually calls him Bela Lugosi at one point. So that tells us that the movie Dracula exists in this universe, which means people are aware of the concept of vampires. So we do know that part. There's no vampire crossovers. It's rare, but it does happen, especially with the very obscure, low-budget films. You'll see actors who were never in another vampire piece. Just a quick piece of trivia. In 2011, a remake was announced called Dance of the Vampire, but for whatever reason, who knows, it never came to fruition. But if you're interested in making a remake, let me know, because I would definitely be a part of that project. All right, let's break down our vampires. See, I'm already in a better mood because I just love doing this. I love talking about vampires. I love talking about obscure movies from the 80s and 90s, and I'm already in a better mood than when I started. Relationship to humans. In this world, vampires appear human. They walk amongst them. They feed off human blood. We see him interacting with several humans, apparently falling in love with one, because at the end he does choose to sacrifice himself. So that is interesting. So we know that they have the ability to feel for humans. And at one point in time, he even says that his appearance is evolutionary, purposefully to be able to walk amongst humans so that people wouldn't even question the existence of vampires. Relationship to animals. The only thing that's really mentioned in this, and you guys have to understand, other than the exotic dance club in the beginning, it's just these two. The whole movie is pretty much these two. The only thing he mentions about animals is that he can feed off of animals, but that the blood kind of lacks the spirit of a human. So we don't know if they have control over animals, if animals, have any kind of reaction to them. All I know is that he could feed off animals should he need to. Appearance. Like I said, he appears human. The difference is this. So we've seen with our vampires, their irises be brighter or more abnormal than a human's would be, and we've seen them change. His stays this way the whole time. So it's a very bright blue iris with the darker ring around the outside of the color. They're clearly contacts, but it's very striking. It's a very striking feature of his. And I do have to say he's got these nails that sort of extend at will, and he can use the nails to cut glass and probably use them also to cut skin. He does cut his own neck at one point. So the other thing I wanted to mention about appearance is it's noted, one, that he has a luscious mullet, which was appropriate for the time. So I'm guessing the cut was for the time, which tells me that his hair does grow. The other thing is that I noted an exercise bike in his living room, which he does actually get on at one point. So that tells me that he doesn't just look the way he looks no matter what, that perhaps he does have to exercise. And we talked about this in Kindred too. We saw vampires doing pull-ups and working out. So that was something interesting. Fangs. 2 sharp, retractable canines. Exactly how it should be. Lena approved. Blood. He does need to feed on blood. So like I said earlier, we know that animal blood can't be used. It can be used to get you from, through the tough times, but it doesn't satiate. It really has to be human or the vampire becomes weakened. If a human drinks a vampire's blood, it's like a drug to them. They can see the way that a vampire does and feel what it's like to be a vampire for a short amount of time. And he implies a few times that if he doesn't eat that night, if he doesn't feed off of her that night, he's going to die. So that tells us that vampires in this universe apparently can starve to death. Don't see that one too often. Often what we see is a vampire can go a very long time without eating, but it's quite torturous. So it's often used as like a punishment. They get locked in a coffin for 3 months without feeding or something. But in this one, if you go so long without eating, it will actually kill you. Food. We never see him eat or drink. As a matter of fact, when she's at his house, she says, I'm really hungry, and he has to like tear his house apart, and then he finds something that's like either spam or anchovies, whatever it is. It looks very gross. Sunlight. This sad, lonely vampire, he can only be out at night. And the whole point of this whole night that he's spending with her is he wants to know what is it like to be in the sun. Sleep. This movie all happens in one night. So I don't know. I assume he sleeps in a bed because he's got these like industrial grates and coverings in his windows. So I would think as long as he's out of the sun, he could pretty much sleep anywhere. He tells a story, which I'm going to tell you in a little bit, that explains to us that you could sleep in the ground should you have to, but I don't see a coffin. I don't think he sleeps in a coffin, but who knows? It literally all happens in like 12 hours. Holy items are never addressed. Rules, I mean, the majority of this movie happens in the vampire's home. So I would have no idea if he needed to be invited in. We don't see any mirrors, so I don't know if he casts a reflection. We don't know like about the running water thing. The one thing we do know is that he can be caught on video because she finds a video camera in his house and is like kind of recording him as they talk. So powers. This guy's got a lot of powers. They can jump extremely high. They have heightened senses. They have a kind of mind control. Because when he's in the club in the beginning, the waitress says, sir, it's a 2-drink minimum. He just looks at her. He doesn't even say anything. And then she just turns and walks away. He does mesmerize the cab driver later and says, destroy your logs. You never saw us. You have no idea what happened tonight. You can't remember. So we also know he's extremely strong and extremely fast. And when I say extremely strong, I mean, he's strong enough that he takes a rose that's been cut like for a lapel and he flicks it, and he's so strong that just flicking this rose, the stem of the rose impales this like punk's eye on a subway. Ridiculous, but apparently he's that strong. He doesn't necessarily, he has healing abilities and he can scale a wall, but the one thing I noted was he doesn't necessarily have the grace that we see with most vampires, because he steps onto sand and is like, I can't find my balance. He's like walking all awkwardly on the sand. So most vampires could walk across any surface and continue to be very graceful, but not this guy. All right, so this is the interesting story I said I was going to tell you. How are the vampires made in this world? So just when I thought that this movie was like so boring, he explains that vampires are born, not made. He said, we're not paranormal, we're just a separate species. He says that he is born, he told a story, he and his mother were starving when they came across a broken down carriage. They fed on the passengers, oblivious to the rising sun. When the dawn started to break, they ran to a nearby barn to hide. Local men must have seen them and lit the barn on fire with the vampire and his mother inside. She pushed him down into the earth to protect him, covering the area with her body. He said, she was pushing down on me so hard I had to dig down to get away from the pressure of her body. And then I could hear noises, I could hear screaming, I lost consciousness. When I woke up, it was 100 years later. I was in an empty field. It took more than 100 years for some of the burned flesh to fade, and some of it never did. So we know that he's at least 200 years old. We don't know how their growth works. or if they live forever, but at least we know that much. So my assumption with all of the research I've done is this is a species that grows to a certain age, let's say like vampire puberty, let's say 25, and then the aging stops, and then you're a full born blooded vampire. So that's my assumption, but he never explains any more than what I just told you. So you and I both know the same thing now. Speaking of which, heartbeat and breathing, never addressed. I don't know. I have no idea. How do they die? So we see the vampire take several gunshots to the chest and it doesn't kill him. He explains later that fire and sunlight are the only ways to destroy a vampire. He explains to her in the beginning that he will die if he doesn't feed tonight. So that also tells us if you don't feed for X amount of whatever, that you can perish from lack of feeding. Are they good or are they bad? So we only meet this one vampire, and very much like most of the vampires we talk about, they can choose if they are going to be good or bad. So he only feeds from humans that are contemplating, planning, and going to commit suicide, and he sees it as putting them out of their misery. Is that it? So he's not good, he's not bad, he's just existing. He's doing what he has to do to exist in the best way that he can think of. Tropes I love and tropes I hate. Let's start with tropes I hate. In this one, and I don't think I've ever told you guys this one, but they have the POV of the vampire seeing the human in almost like an infrared way, and then hearing the heartbeat very, very loudly, and the vampire focusing on the pulsing jugular. I hate that one. I just feel like it's very, very, very overdone. Now in 1989 maybe it wasn't overdone, but now it is. The POV of the vampire with the pounding heartbeat in the background, I'm just like, oh my goodness. And then at one point in time he's in the club and there's a crash of a cymbal in the music and he like covers his ears, and I think, oh come on, you hear loud noises all day long, you definitely listen to music and watch TV, so that's a bit of a dramatic reaction. And you knowingly walked into a nightclub, so if you didn't think there was going to be loud music, what were you doing? Tropes I love. I don't think I've ever said this one to you guys. The lonely vampire wandering the earth for centuries, finally connecting to one person. Their souls connect. It's cheesy, but I'm a sucker for that trope. I really am. I have no way to explain it. This is a good moment for me to pause this video because the battery's about to die. So I will obviously edit this out of the podcast, but YouTube, I will be right back. Oh boy. So just spent about 20 minutes trying to find another battery because they were still packed up from Philly. So spent 20 minutes tearing everything apart to find another battery, only to get everything set up, and then my mouse was dead. So I had to get a new battery in the mouse. I'm living the dream, everybody. All right, let's just jump back into this because I have to head to the hospital in 40 minutes. So let's do this. Let's get to the ratings. I am ready. Okay. How scary or evil is the vampire of Dance of the Damned? Because we only have one vampire in this. He does have a lot of powers, okay? And mind control, that's a big one. Speed, strength, heightened senses. He does drink blood, and it really does need to be human. So we need to remember all this. It appears that he's rather hard to kill. That's another thing we need to look at. But he can't be in the sun, so that takes a point away. And they have to be born, not made. So there's probably not a lot of vampires. So that's another thing to think of. And he particularly appears to have very strong morals, since he only kills those who are planning to end it all. So he's not just walking the streets and grabbing anybody. It's really the people who already want to die. He clearly has empathy. So when you sit down and you look at all of it, he's kind of middle of the road. He has the possibility of being a very bad vampire. Very scary, very evil, but he's choosing not to. So the vampire of Dance of the Damned gets 5 out of 10 stakes to the heart for scariness and evil. And if you guys are wondering, he doesn't have a name. He's just the vampire. Who knows? How sexy or alluring is the vampire of Dance of the Damned? When I first saw this vampire, I did roll my eyes. I really did. But by the time the sex scene happened, I was a little bit in love. I'm not gonna lie, I was a little bit in love with him. He doesn't have any like special allure to him. It's not like women are drawn to him. So I do have to keep that in mind. It's not like they're unwilling when they come to him. It's not like he turns, doesn't have to work at it. Now, when he turns it on, he definitely has some sensuality. He can be very sexy. He does the thing where he slices his finger across his skin so she can taste the blood is very sensual. The love scene is kind of sweaty and very desperate, and there's like this 80s saxophone playing in the background, and it goes on for like a little longer than it really needs to, but then it kind of slows down and it does get sort of sensual. It has a very like HBO late night / Skinamax feel to it for sure. I mean, any movie where boobies are out 1 minute in, you know what kind of movie you're watching. So I ask myself, is this vampire more sexy or scary? And the answer is he is way more sexy than he is scary. So he earns himself a 7.5 out of 10 onks for sexiness and allure. And that was with the mullet. So that's pretty, you gotta be pretty sexy to pull that off, that's for sure. Okay, my thoughts. Let's just jump, I'm gonna just do like quick, down and dirty, right? Get to it because, as I said, I'm tired. Remember when I said that I love cheesy, lame vampire movies from the 80s and 90s that are so bad that I love to watch them? Not just do I love to watch them, but I love to force other people to watch them. I'm on the fence with this one. It is bad. It's bad. But there is something about it that makes me want to watch it again and force other people to watch it. The first 30 minutes, I was like, dear goddess, this is awful. I don't know if I can finish this. I don't know if I can do this, but I had already told so many people I was doing it. I was committed. By the end of it, I was like, aw, it's done. It ends in a freeze frame. And I was like, aw, it's done. I wanted to keep watching it. The vampire has a Michael from the Lost Boys feel to him. He really does. And I almost have to wonder if they were kind of going for that. Because look at the picture. He does kind of have that vibe for sure. The story is very flimsy, but it's not entirely terrible. At least I have to say for this, it's different. It is different, okay? It's not like the same old rehash. Thank God he didn't like admit at the end that he's actually Dracula, because I would have probably thrown something. I love the idea of two screwed up people coming together and being screwed up together and clashing in this one amazing night that changes everything. Maybe it's because it was written in a time that I was like forming my core self and what I enjoyed, but there's just something about this movie that resonated with me. I was ready to hate it. I was like, I'm gonna hate this. I thought I liked the first 3 in June. I'm gonna hate this one. I saved the most obscure, the cheesiest for last, but I don't hate it. I mean, even the poor acting, and there is poor acting in this, could not ruin its charm. It kind of just added to it. And it's a little bit choppy, like the reactions. I don't understand the reaction. I don't know. You guys just have to watch this one. I mean, it was like 2 different writers wrote the dialogue for each people or for each character, and then someone wrote her dialogue, someone wrote his dialogue, and then they just kind of threw it together. That's what it felt like. But they made it work. You remember I said The only way to pull off a bad script is to give it 1,000%, and they did. They did do that. I looked through the reviews just out of curiosity, and there was a lot of reviews that agreed that it was good for how low budget it was. There were some people that even said, like, I don't dislike it, and I can see why people really like it. And I think that sums it up perfectly. Like, I don't hate it, and I can see why people love it. So, surprise to all of us, this one's on my guilty pleasures list now. I think I could definitely see myself on a stormy night pouring a glass of wine with a friend and being like, you have to watch Dance of the Damned. And that is it. Guys, I'm not going to add any fluff to this because I just wanted to like do this sweet and to the point and wrap it up. We have wrapped up June. I cannot believe it, but every movie I watched this month is on my guilty's pleasure list. Now, a couple were already there, but Sundown the Vampire in Retreat and this one have joined the rotation. So awesome. I loved doing these movies. I hope you guys had as much fun with these as I did. And speaking of fun, I want to keep that fun going. So we are going to do something in July, and that is all vampire comedies. So the next one is a little bit of like a rom-com. It's from 2012. It has Miss Alicia Silverstone, and it is called Vamps. And it's an Amy Heckerling. If you know who Amy Heckerling is, then you'll know the style of movie this is. It's kind of like Sex in the City, but with vampires. So it should be something different, something fun. It is available for rent on Prime. I just bought it. It was only like $7 to buy, so I just bought it. That way I don't feel rushed. And if I need to go back and rewind and watch a couple things, I can. Because that's the downside to renting. You get 24 hours, so if something happens and I have to go back or I need to like reference something, now I own it. So Vamps with Miss Alicia Silverstone, and I'm sorry, but her name is not popping in my head, but she's from Don't Trust the Bee and Apartment whatever G. She's in this. So I will see you in July. We'll do a tarot pull. Again, we're going to do some comedies because I think the hospital thing is going to keep going into July. So I'm enjoying having some more light-hearted things in the mix. And then in August, we'll be getting ourselves geared up for spooky season. So we're going to get back to some darker vampire material, I promise. In the meantime, if you made it all the way to the end, thank you, thank you, thank you. Please comment. Let me know what you guys want. There's like no comments on these videos, and it really does help me. It helps this channel get recommended to others, but it helps me form what you want to see. So if you're getting bored with this, please tell me why. Tell me what you want to see. So hopefully I haven't come across like extra bitchy this week, but I'm very, very tired, and I still have to edit this to get it uploaded in time. So if it's late, I'm really sorry. But bear with me. It's going to be a tough summer, but hey, we're going to get through this together. We just had the summer solstice, the longest day and night of the year, so now we can head back towards having a little more nighttime, which I'm excited about. So I love you all. I wish you wicked hugs and bloody kisses. Good evening. All right, YouTube friends, I'm going. So I'm beat, and I still have to edit, and I'm on my way to the hospital, so I will have to edit in the morning. But love you guys. Please let me know what you want to see, because I just don't know, and I don't want to get to the point where I just quit, because I really do want to grow this. And you know, the podcast has been out for 3 years, and I've learned a lot in 3 years, so the YouTube is still new. I'm still learning, so please let me know. All right, I'll see you later. Bye.